So, namaste, ladies and gentlemen, Jai Hind, and this is the book that we're going to talk about today, 10 Heads of Ravana. But what's important is, what's the prefix ahead of that? A critique of Hinduphobic scholars. Now, that's quite a bold statement to make right on the cover of the book. And you don't expect less from Rajiv Malhotra and his team. Joining us now are some of the young authors, the bright minds, who have actually challenged the intellectual heads, 10 intellectual heads, absolute brains, or people who consider themselves past masters in their field. So Anurag Sharma, Subhodeep Mukhopadhyay, Divya Reddy has actually edited it along with Rajiv Malhotra ji. So she's a co-editor, and also Manogna Sastry. So namaste to all of you. Wow, quite a task that you guys have taken on. Huh? You really, it's like a David versus Goliath. If I were to just look at the names and you guys going after them. Romila Thapar, Sheldon Pollock, Michael Witzel, Devdutt Pattanaik, Irfan Habib, Shashi Tharoor, Audrey Truschke, Ramachandra Guha, and Kancha Ilaiah, and of course, Wendy Doniger. So some of them are quite infamous. They were all there in terms of the efforts to dismantle Hindutva globally. But let me ask you, who's going to go first on this? Divya Reddy, since your name is there on the cover of the book, so let me ask you, how did this effort happen?
Namaste, Anandji. Thank you for having us. So the book was actually conceptualized at our annual retreat that we had at Rishikesh in 2019. So it is a characteristic feature of Infinity Foundation that we have always taken on new pioneering domains where nobody has dared to venture. So in that spirit, we thought we all of us know that these contemporary scholars, there's something factually inaccurate or something missing in their work. But there was never before a place where there was concrete evidence or something like a go-to book for people to use to refute their claims. So Ravana, we have used it as a metaphor because just like we all know, the historical Ravana was famous for his intellectual and physical strength, but we know that he used all of his power of influence and might to cause adharma. Now, these contemporary scholars that we have chosen in this anthology are some very famous political leaders, Padma Bhushan awardees, and so on. So their power of influence can be compared to the historical Ravana. But their positions on dharma are counterproductive to the unity and integrity of India. And that is what we have aimed to demonstrate in this book. It's a factual, evidence-based rebuttal.
But first, let me talk about the flights of our historical imagination. Pushpaka Vimana is what you have called it, Anurag. And that too, Romila Thapar. Yeah. Romila Thapar, isn't she the same lady who recently said that Yudhishthira was perhaps influenced by Gautam Buddha, although a yuga separates the two of them? Yeah, please.
Yeah, so thank you, Anandji. Yeah, as you rightly said, why I have given this title to my essay, because while reading her works, I found that there were a lot of imaginative things which she has come up with. Like, that she has come up with terms like Vedic Brahminism, Puranic Hinduism. So she says that Vedic Brahminism is different from Puranic Hinduism. Puranic Hinduism is something which is the current form of Hinduism. And she says that Vedic Brahminism, according to her, propagated the use of Sanskrit through elaborate rituals and had to, compromise with the local indigenous cults. So when the Aryans invaded India, so they had to compromise with the local indigenous cults, and because of that process of acculturation, what we call Puranic Hinduism was born. So I found these terms because if you look into the tradition, our culture and tradition for the past 2,000 years, there is no found basis on which you can come up with these terms, Vedic Brahminism, and so Vedic Brahminism is the evil thing, and then Puranic Hinduism is also evil. It's not that it's good, but the root cause of all the problems in Puranic Hinduism is the oppressive structures in Vedic Brahminism. So she comes up with all sorts of imaginary things. She says that the Bhakti saints were inspired by Buddhism. All the Bhakti hymns which you listen, they are actually inspired by Buddhist philosophy. which is again a kind of imagination, because Buddhism doesn't even believe in an ultimate reality or Ishwar or Bhagwan. So I mean, there is no point in having a kind of devotional way to reach ultimate reality when there is no ultimate reality in Buddhism. So yeah, I mean, these are the kind of things which she uses. And as you know, she is very influential. She has influenced public policies in educational institutions. So in my essay in this book, what I've tried to do is I have tried to look into her works in a very detailed way, look for whatever she says, whether it is factually correct or not. And then through our traditional sources and, in Sanskrit texts, I have come up with refutation of many of the things which she says. She says that Valmiki might be earlier, but there were other people who copied and put all those interpolations in the Valmiki Ramayana. So Valmiki Ramayana is not the actual complete work of Valmiki. She says even the book 1 and the Balakand, Balakand is itself an interpolation according to her. So the whole book 1. And she also says that there are unbrahmanized and brahmanized portions in the Ramayana. So all the brahmanized portions in the Ramayana are those portions where Sri Ram is equated with Vishnu and he's said to be an incarnation of Vishnu. So all these are all interpolations. This is something which happened later on.
So please, does she have the answer to why in the Adi Kavya with 24,000 verses, that is Ramayana, or the Mahakavya, which is the Mahabharata, which encapsulates all aspects of Purushartha, Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha, how is it that nobody has a surname?
She doesn't even answer.
Everybody is single name, no? Everybody is known by their name.
Correct.
So from Sita, Hanuman, Ram, Lakshman, Dasharath, Kaikeyi, Kaushalya, everybody is known by their first name in Ramayana.
Correct.
In Mahabharata, there is no second name, no surname. So how did she understand Brahmanism here? Where did the concept of Brahmanism come here?
For her, Brahmanism is anyone who does any Vedic ritual is a person who follows Vedic Brahmanism. So all these rituals, yajnas and chanting of Vedic mantras. So all that is even for her, and that is the something she calls Vedic Brahmanism.
Again, you've taken another giant in modern day history, Devdutt Pattanaik, Subhodeep Mukhopadhyay. Tell me, Dada, bada panga nahi liya?
Yeah. First of all, namaste, Anandji, for having me
Namaste.
Here. Yeah. So, as you rightly
said,
from
your neighboring state.
Yes.
Why have you?
As you very rightly said, he is a gigantic personality. I mean, about that there is no doubt. He is a famous mythologist. He is a writer. His books are also used as civil service exams, and this is one of the factors which I've tried to show in this essay, that some of the things which he has said, which many practitioners of Hinduism, traditionalists, even normal people might find very strange. The interpretations are not according to what we normally perceive or what we see around us. So that is at one level, and that is what I've tried to answer, given with some examples. Like if you see the book, I've given specific examples where what he says is not the way tradition interprets that. Like, for example, definition of dharma itself. I've cited some examples, like he's given a definition of dharma as potential. And that is not a word which is found in any standard dictionary, for example. So that is at one level. The second level which I've tried to analyze is, why does he say what he says? There must be some reason. Why does he interpret certain things a certain way? What is the lens that he's using? And that comes from he himself says that he's a mythologist, number one. And he's also admitted that he believes in postmodern thought. So the lens that he uses to analyze India and Hinduism is a mixture of these two categories, postmodernism and mythology. And when you use these lenses to analyze India and Hinduism, it is by its very definition, it will paint things in an unsatisfactory light. I mean, it will appear Hinduphobic. It will appear, say, anti-India, for example. I'm not using that term. I mean, in that sense, like he says in many places that he does not subscribe to the idea of nationhood. So nations are a recent construct. And in terms of, if you look at it from a point of myth, nations do not exist. So that is at one level. He's saying that. Then he does not subscribe to the idea of...
But geographical entities exist. Geographical entities like India, Bharat during the Maratha period, 70 years of the Maratha rule, or even before in the past, when from Gandhara all the way up to on this to Tripura and beyond. How Hyun Sang described Bharatvarsha.
Absolutely. See, that is the response which I've given. That what he's looking at is one very specific view, which not only him, many people believe that, for example, nations do not exist or did not exist earlier, and India itself is a British project. The British came, and the colonial India was actually the starting point of the modern India nation. So I'm saying, no, this is a very narrow view of looking at India. People have their own self-identifiers. Like the term Hindu may not have existed 2000 years back, but the identity of the Hindu people, that is something which has existed for a long time. And that is attested from foreign sources. Like the example of Darius I, 550
Yes.
BCE. So he says the land of Hindustan. So he's very clear when he says the land of Hindustan. Then when the invaders came from the Middle East, so they knew exactly whom they were invading. Or even prior to that Megasthenes, when he came to India, he did not come to South Asia. He came to India specifically. I mean, it's not some first place where with no boundaries, no culture. It's a very specific boundaries are there. Maybe, I mean, there's a culture continuum. But there's some common thread which binds the entire geography together.
Yeah, so, beyond the Indus or beyond the Saraswati.
Beyond the Indus, and Himalaya in the top, then you have the oceans. So there are multiple definitions we have of our own identity. Even say the Shakti Pithas, for example. They are in a specific geography. Then you have the Kumbh Melas spread across India. So you have different definitions of India. So these are some of the things which I've tried to show that his portrayal is a very, in a sense, a negative kind of portrayal of both India.
But why would he want to do something like that?
If you see mythology as an academic discipline, so it came from colonialism. It was a product of that. It was the West's attempt to understand the non-West's past.
Right.
So that's why his view is like a outsider view, like a Western trained anthropologist is saying, okay, this is India. So the tribes meet and they do all these things. So that is probably the kind of view he's telling us about Hinduism from that perspective.
You people have also collaborated in trying to break down somebody who wants to dismantle Hindutva. So Manogna take it on Audrey Truschke, and also then, of course, you've done a lot of work here. You've gone after Irfan Habib and also Michael Witzel. Wow, what time hai aapke paas, Manogna? Why did you want to go after them? And how have you done it?
Namaste, Anandji. Thank you for having us. I think what you would have noticed among the common threads, through what Divya spoke, through what Subhodeep spoke, and through what Anurag spoke. So there is, I think, the narratives that have been built systematically in academia, in public discourse, and now, of course, social media being a big part of it, where you are legitimizing, let's say, into India theories. That is, the Aryan invasion, migration backdrop, which, despite having systematically been disproved with archaeological evidence and so on, that continues to be a background. So then, because of that, there are consequences where the indigeneity of some of our assets, including the Vedas, including, Sanskritam as a language, including everything that we see as fundamental to the Hindu identity and hence the Bharatiya identity, the indigeneity of that will be conveniently called into question, right? What we have done here in selecting these scholars, right, whether it is Audrey Truschke, whether it is, Professor Michael Witzel, or even Professor Irfan Habib, all of them have used academic institutions, whether it is the Harvard University, whether it is ICHR in the case of Dr. Habib, and from ICHR, the way that institution was used during the Ram Janmabhoomi movement, right, to support the Sunni Waqf board in a legal case. Then, of course, you have Dr. Truschke writing on social media on one hand and writing books. So all of these, we have noticed these themes which are carried out through their works. And we have systematically considered the various positions these scholars have taken. It could be the specifics, as in the case of what each of us here have mentioned. It could also be some of the broader themes where the where the adhikara of representing Hinduism, the adhikara of representing Bharatiya identity and Bharatiya positions is not given, how will I say, it's not given, the native people, or rather the indigenous voices are not given the same standing as those of these academic positions and scholars. So that has been one of the main focus.
But why Dr. Tharoor, Divya?
Yes, to begin with, why Tharoor? I think, like you rightly said, he has impeccable academic credentials, and he's very well known for his mastery over English, which unfortunately is a mark of intellectual credibility in our colonized society today. So what I learned from his work on Hinduism is that he has this hypothesis, or rather a message that he wants to convey, that Hinduism is infinitely open. There is absolutely no boundaries or barriers of entry. Anything and everything is Hinduism. So I like to call it Tharoor's anything goes Hinduism. So this anything goes attitude is a threat to the survival of our civilization. This leads to cultural appropriation, and we have products like the Christian yoga and so forth. And another important characteristic feature of his work is that he constantly downplays the Kshatriya Dharma of Hinduism, which is one of the most important pillars of Dharma and also the very reason for our existence today. He says Hinduism has anyway survived for several millennia, so we don't really need any action-oriented or approach or something like the Kshatriya Dharma. So that is very threatening to the integrity of our country and our civilization. And there are also numerous factual inaccuracies in his work. For instance, his entire chronology is based on the very well-refuted Aryan invasion theory. There are also numerous instances where he has mistranslated and misinterpreted Sanskrit words. And he's also a strong proponent of religious conversion. And that's an irony because he claims to be a very liberal and pluralistic Hindu. And religious conversion is an act of reducing diversity. It essentially stands for exclusivity. So I think him being a very influential leader in the political arena, it's important for the audience to know what he is propagating in the name of Hinduism.
Quite a big challenge. Now I understand where this dedicated to all intellectual Kshatriyas, the idea must have germinated from. But Manogna, I want to understand from you. Have you reached out? You guys, I can turn around and say, Acha, you are intellectually trying to dismantle the intellectuals, so-called intellectuals.
Yes. I think we've been very clear right from when the project was conceptualized that we wanted to take the intellectual positions of these scholars, avoid any ad hominem, any, this is not an attack on anybody's persona just because we're calling it Ravana, right? So it is very important that these intellectual positions be challenged because it then goes beyond just the personalities, right? It becomes decades old, entrenched narratives which are being questioned and rebutted in a systematical manner, and then laid bare for the audience to decide what is the intellectual bar that you would like in your public discourse. Today, what we have is this inherited, entrenched false narratives, which are actually based on very little facts.
Did you share your works, Anurag? Did you reach out to Romila Thapar and say, this is what I have to say, your comments, please? See, you're poking the bear anyway, so why not just walk into the cave? So.
In fact, for the launch of this book, we even invited all these scholars. They could come and they can have a discussion with us. But unfortunately, none of them accepted our invitation. So we have been trying to bring this thing into a kind of a discussion mode. But we are not getting these people are not responding to us. We are not getting cooperation from the other side. So yeah.
Yeah, so it's not just no comment; it's like purely blocked, totally.
No. So in fact, we would love to have a discussion. Yeah.
More importantly, what you're saying is this is not personal. What you're trying to do is you're going to challenge them intellectually and their intellectual logic. The weight of their intellectual prowess is what you're challenging, and that's why you're saying read it and then decide. Now, brilliant, ladies and gentlemen, that young minds have decided to not just form a group of intellectual Kshatriyas, but you've also defined a vyuha. You've entered the battlefield with a vyuha, And I'm interested to see how some of these intellectuals actually respond. But phenomenal conversation. I really enjoyed it. And I have to be honest, I've not read the whole book yet. I have read some portions, and that's why I was dwelling on some portions a little more than the others. But I look forward to reading this in whole. Thank you very much. Wonderful conversation.